There's two studies that show children who are circumcised early have double the rate of autism. And it's highly likely because they're given Tylenol. So, none of this is this positive, but all of it is stuff that we should be paying attention to.
Hi, my name is Dr. Rubin, and yet again, RFK Jr. is misleading the public about autism spectrum disorder. There's only one study I could find that looked into that particular question. In a Danish cohort of about 300,000 children, there was a little over 1,000 cases of autism that were reported in that cohort, and they found that those that were circumcised were more likely to have a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder later in life. That 2 times risk was only in a subgroup in the analysis, looking at specifically those diagnosed before the age of 5. But they did not adjust for confounding factors that are very significant, like genetics, parental psychiatric history, cultural practices, which may change how people will seek medical care, a lot of different issues that weren't looked into. In addition, his claim saying that, well, they used Tylenol for these circumcisions, that wasn't investigated in the study. You can't make that assumption. They didn't actually look into acetaminophen use during the procedure. So again, he's saying things that are cherry-picking little bits of information, lying and distorting reality to try to scare and confuse people into believing what he wants you to believe.
Tonight, HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. suggesting there is a link now between circumcision and autism.
There's 2 studies that show children who are circumcised early have double the rate of autism. And it's highly likely because they're given Tylenol.
Kennedy did not detail these studies or any other evidence to back up his claims, which, of course, come after Kennedy and President Trump have both linked Tylenol use during pregnancy to autism, despite decades of evidence that it is safe. Out front now, Dr. Scott Hadland. He is the chief of adolescent medicine at Massachusetts General Brigham for Children. And I appreciate your time, doctor. Thank you so much. So are you aware, claims like this get made and they can be really scary for people? Obviously, most people circumcise their children. Are you aware of any studies or evidence to back up Secretary Kennedy linking circumcisions to autism?
Right. Well, this conversation that has been really sort of erupted today has prompted a lot of us to take a look at the data and just make sure that we're not missing something. It is very clear. I've looked at the 2 studies that the secretary mentioned. It is very clear that there is not a strong evidence base that links circumcision to autism. And when I look at those studies, there's a lot of methodological concerns. Look, pediatricians actually recommend circumcision as something that families might choose because the benefits outweigh the risks. And this discussion today doesn't change how we think about that.
Yeah. So there's a breaking news story that just came out that garbage disposal throat, you know what I'm talking about, just announced that boys who are circumcised are twice as likely to develop autism. So, where my... like, I don't know if we need to ask him, sir, are you not? Are you? I have so many questions, but I'm not trying to, I don't know. I don't know how to ask the question because what? Because if that's the case, I'm going to assume him, syphilitic Sid, half the men in the Republican Party. What? You just cannot make this shit up. On a serious note, we have gone from it being vaccines to Tylenol. Now we're saying that boys who are circumcised are twice as likely to develop autism. If that's the case, I'm going to assume that there are a lot of autistics out here, right? Nothing bad towards autistic people at all. But how are you going to... I just don't understand how, as a country, we have gone from believing science to believe in the man with the brain worm who eats roadkill. Okay, bye.
Hi guys, this is Sienna and you're watching Sienna's React. So RFK Jr. recently claimed that boys who are circumcised early are twice as likely to have autism because they are given Tylenol afterward for pain, and Trump backed him up. But let's be honest guys, if this were true, then the whole world would be autistic by now, because almost every child has had fever or taken Tylenol at some point in their life. Let's expose everything wrong with what they said. Studies they cited are weak, unproven, and rejected by scientists. Millions of babies worldwide are circumcised and billions have taken Tylenol. Yet, autism still affects only about 1 to 2% of children. This logic just doesn't add up, guys. Well, let's watch people's reactions to this, at least doctors' reactions to this. But before we do, please do well to like, share, and of course, subscribe to keep the channel moving.
Holy cow, folks, 6 former U.S. Surgeon Generals who were appointed by every president since going back to George H.W. Bush wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post today trying to warn people about the dangers of Health and Human Services Secretary RFK Jr. And I'm going to quote the last paragraph from this op-ed. Secretary Kennedy is entitled to his views, but he is not entitled to put people's health at risk. He has rejected science, misled the public, and compromised the health of Americans. The nation deserves a Health and Human Services Secretary who is committed to scientific integrity and can restore morale and trust in our public health agencies. Having served at senior levels in government, we know that politics are complicated, but this is bigger than politics. It's about putting the health of Americans first. They outlined several issues regarding RFK Jr.'s tenure as Health and Human Services Secretary, from gutting the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices to spreading disinformation about vaccines and sowing doubt and distrust in public health institutions, to not properly addressing the ongoing measles outbreak that threatens our measles elimination status, as well as spreading lies about acetaminophen use during pregnancy. There are now multiple medical organizations calling on RFK Jr. to resign because he is not fit for the task.
You start with a small.
There's 2 studies that show children who are circumcised early have double the rate of autism. And it's highly likely because they're given Tylenol.
I'm Alicia. I talk about history and current events in ways that actually make sense, but I'm also an autistic mom of 3 autistic kiddos. Let's talk about this nonsense. So the only study that ever tried to link circumcision to autism was done in Denmark in 2015. Out of the individuals they looked at, they found that those who were circumcised were diagnosed with autism just a little bit more often. But even those researchers said this was just the first look. Their data didn't account for things like family history, Tylenol use, or any other health issues. And that's how that scientific process works when it comes to research study. You start with a small study to ask a question, then you do much larger studies to find the true answer. So a fun way for me to explain this would be like when my daughter was 6 years old, she decided that she was allergic to green beans, and I served it for dinner one night. Now she took a bite, she gagged, you can imagine what happened next. Very traumatizing for both of us. But here's the thing, it didn't mean she was allergic to it. It just means that she really hated green beans. See, 2 things happening at the same time doesn't mean one caused the other. The study that they quote for their belief that Tylenol causes autism, that was a smaller study. A much more recent study was done, and that link completely disappeared when they took in family genetics. That's the next step in that same scientific process. You test small, then you test big, and you see if the results are the same. So no, circumcision and Tylenol don't cause autism. This just shows how fast a small study can be turned into a wild rumor if quoted incorrectly. But let's keep it fun. Share with me your funniest kid stories below, because I am still recovering from that green bean incident, and that was almost 20 years ago.
RFK Jr. is now blaming autism on foreskin, or lack of foreskin. Just shifted into full conspiracy mode. He's claimed that kids that are circumcised are twice as likely to develop autism because they take Tylenol after the procedure. And then he quotes a flawed 2015 study from Denmark where it showed a correlation but not a causation. If you want to know more about that, follow my YouTube channel. What's even worse about all this is he can't even prove that any of these boys actually took Tylenol after they were circumcised. There was no data in that study that showed any of that. Basically, you've got a health secretary who is feeding everyone conspiracy theories and calling it science. Trump, He's an absolute nugget as well. America, I feel really sorry for you guys.
So let's explore whether circumcision is right for your son with the big circumcision. Pro, a circumcision means less penis. Let's face it, penis is not exactly the belle of the balls. Removing a little bit of penis from your son's penis means less overall penis, also known as lop. Pro, your son will have something to talk about at parties. Pro, it's the only opportunity you'll have to legally remove a piece of your child's anatomy. Con, circumcisions are weird. Let's say no one had ever heard of circumcisions, and then someone came up to you and was like, hey, you know what you should do to your newborn son? Cut off the foreskin of his penis. What you would say to that is, no. Now let's talk pros and cons for not getting a circumcision. Pro, your son won't get part of his penis sliced off. Pro, if you don't circumcise your son, you won't have to spend money on a hat to keep his penis warm in the winter, also known as a peenie beanie. Though if you do opt to chop, we at ABC Parenting do sell peenie beanies. Con, you won't get any cool bris gifts. Con, if you're circumcised but your son isn't, then his penis will not look like your penis. And like my dad always said, sons' penises should look like their dad's penises. Why? I guess I don't know.
See, now, what I personally want to know is how the fuck did we get here? Hi everyone, if you're new, welcome. If you're not new, you know what fucking time it is, bitch. It's time for the Daily Scream. Yeah, so we've officially lost the plot. RFK Jr. decided to say at this week's cabinet meeting, with his whole chest, mind you, that boys who have been circumcised are twice as likely to be diagnosed with autism because they were given Tylenol. I'm sorry, but I can't say it with a straight face. There's just are you kidding me? I literally, I can't do this today. I cannot do this today. He literally told Trump, quote, there are 2 studies showing circumcised children having double the rate of autism. It's highly likely because they were given Tylenol. Now, one of those studies is from Denmark in 2015. And yes, it found a correlation between circumcision and autism. But the study never even measured Tylenol use. Not once. That's like if I were to be like, umbrellas cause rain because rain and umbrellas show up at the same fucking time. And the other study from Ireland in 2024, it actually showed that boys with autism showed improvements in sensory issues and irritability after the procedure. So the evidence literally does the opposite of what RFK Jr. is saying. Meanwhile, Trump's sitting there nodding yep, makes sense. Just tough it out, ladies. He literally told pregnant individuals, and I quote, don't take Tylenol, tough it out. Right, because people should be taking health expertise from a man who looks like a clogged Arby's fried grease pipe with a history of sexual assault. So, just to recap, the US government is warning about circumcision, Tylenol, and autism based on 2 studies that prove absolutely nothing. Actual doctors are saying Tylenol is still safe if used responsibly. So if you're pregnant, listen to your OBGYN, not some worm-filled brain geriatric. And if any man decides to tell you Tylenol causes autism, don't take it. Send them a bib and a pacifier because they're little baby bitches. And might I also suggest kicking them directly in the cojones and then telling them to tough it out.
So, this is real. RFK Jr. says that the pain that young male infants feel when they are circumcised is linked to autism. This season of America is ratchet as hell. It's like season 7 Game of Thrones ratchet. Are MAGA women now going to stop circumcising their male boys? How is this real?
So old Brainworm Jr. said circumcision causes autism, and I believe it. I do, and you know why? It's because I'm easily led astray, that's why. And I'm thankful every single day I didn't take them Tism tablets as a kid. Don't get me wrong, I'm cut down there, I'm just tough. And I remember the day, too, I was just 2 days old. My mom said, hey, son, do you want to get cut down there? And I said, hell no. What kind of question is that, Mom? And she said, it'll help you have less smegma. And I said, I don't want to play less video games. And she said, no, not Sega Genesis, smegma Genesis. That starts in the foreskin. That's a little retractable part on your hog. We can leave it and it'll look like a really tight hoodie, or we can peel it back like a convertible, and we just want to snip it and give you a permanent convertible down there. Does that sound good? And I said, hell yeah. Hell yeah. I want me a convertible down there. I said, Doc, come on in here and give me that high and tight. So the next thing you know, the doctor peels my diaper back. He takes one look at me and he says, hey, nurse, we're going to need the big saw in here. That's what he said. He said the big saw. So an hour and 2 saw blades later, I was cut. And he said, you nurses, make sure you dispose of this foreskin properly. We don't want Buffalo Bill coming in here and making 2 to 3 skin suits out of this. And then he turned to me, and he had good bedside manner. He said, son, this looks like it hurts. You want some Autism tablets for the pain? I said, hell no, doc. That'll give me autism. Just dip my pacifier in some hydrocodone every once in a while, and I'll be fine. But I digest. I'm thankful every single day I didn't take them Autism tablets. I dodged a bullet. Because if I took them, I'd be socially awkward. I'd be hyperfixated on a topic, something like the president, just the current one. So today I'm raising my emotional support beer to Garbage Disposal Voice Jr. for saying what nobody was thinking.
So guys, research have shown that autism starts in the brain, not in a bottle of pen medication or circumcised child. Millions of kids have used Tylenol safely. So let's stop the panic and protect the truth, because every false claim costs another parent their peace of mind. Well, if you've made it this far, thank you for watching. Please do well to like, share, and of course, subscribe to keep the channel moving. Till next time.